And now for our speaker. Ornella is an accomplished agile coach with decades of experience in diverse software product organizations, currently enhancing product development at Vinted. Known for her innovative approach, she combines elements from various frameworks to solve complex problems, recently developed a custom-built operating model that accelerates value delivery using domain-driven design and dynamic reteaming. The title of her talk, Team Evolution with DDD and Dynamic Reteaming. Please put your hands together for Ornella.
Hello, everybody. It's only a decade of experience. When you said decades, that made me feel super old. That's not true. I'm super excited to be here for the anniversary edition of KraftConf, and that's my first one. I do hope to come here next year, because next year I'm having a great time. So many great speakers, so many interesting conversations. I'm really glad to see so many beautiful faces here to listen to what I'm going to share with you. And what I'm going to share with you is something that's really, really close to my heart. That's something that we have been working for 3 years already at a company called Vinted. I call this a team evolution with DDD and dynamic reteaming. So it's really a story of how this one team in Vinted evolved to use DDD and dynamic reteaming to shape their form differently than they used to be. So it's not only about how we evolved as a team, but also how our understanding of the teams evolved. But before going into all that, I would like to tell you a little bit context about how Vinted looks like, how we operate. And this is a small fraction, like a small snapshot of how we look right now. So we will zoom into what we call buyer domain. So this is the team that I will be talking about. So we have roughly 100 people in that domain. We split our domain in 7 subdomains. We have multiple other types of teams, but I will not be touching that. We belong into the broader business unit that is called Marketplace. Marketplace has 7 domains just like ours. So you can imagine that the size of our business unit is roughly around 700 people. And we all belong to the group, Vinted Group, which is 2,000 people, or roughly 2,000 people at the moment. And we are all on the mission to make a sustainable consumption first choice worldwide. So now, this is a snapshot of how we look right now. But I want to take you back roughly 3 years ago and tell you a little bit of how we started this evolution. So I joined Vinted 3.5 years ago. I joined it because my friend and my mentor, Alona, invited me because she was entering the role of engineering director. She saw multiple challenges in the organization. She wanted to get my help to sort these things out. I joined the company. I started at the team level observing what is happening. And, well, there were many good things happening. Our delivery practice, our experimentation practices were decent enough. There were some easy, quick wins that we could have done, and we did it in the first half of the year. And then we started noticing that there are way more systemic challenges holding us back. So what we did together with Alona, we sit in the room and we did the symptom mapping. I'm not sure if that's a formal technique, so to say, but that's something that I like to do whenever I have a challenge in front of me and I'm trying to make sense of it. I like to use as symptoms instead of actual problems, because it is a little bit liberating. You don't really think about the root cause in the beginning. You try to sense the system as it is, and it's not only about objective, factual things that are happening, but it's also about subjective things, like how people are feeling, what they're experiencing, and our experiences can be very subjective. So we did this together with Alona. We created this map. We wrote a bunch of the symptoms. When we tried to understand the interconnectedness between those symptoms, we felt like we got somewhere with it, but it was only 2 of us. And we felt like we cannot really see the whole broader picture because, well, I'm an agile coach. She's engineering director. We lack a perspective from product, from design, from analytics. So we did the same exercise with a broader group. We asked peers from our team to join us for the workshop, where we repeated the exercise and also enhanced it, the prioritization and problem definitions with how might we statements. We combined a bunch of those how might we statements. There was like 16 or 20 of them, which was already something that was a bit of a concern. We will not be able to address all 20 challenges at the same time. So we, of course, prioritized, and we had few areas popping up. So first of all, it was strategy. We felt like that our team is not super aligned and that we don't necessarily see where we are heading. They lack clarity, and if some of you were in the orange stage before, listening to James Yip presentation about grassroots strategy, that's the symptom that there's lack of a strategy in place. So that was one of the areas that we wanted to improve. Another area was alignment. And that's the area where we later on focused on this operating model that I'm going to talk about. And we wanted to figure out how can we get those compound effects of the teams working in the same domain, in the same area, essentially, and how can we use our organizational structure to help us achieve that. We felt like our teams that at that time were very like canonical in the sense that we would optimize for like long-lived, stable, cross-functional teams that would give them the problem to solve, but then those problems were overlapping and they were stepping on each other's toes all the time. So we felt like organizing those teams differently would actually help us elevate some of these pain points that we had. So that happened, and then we decided to start looking into what is happening around us, not only in our organization, but that's not super unique challenge. Like other people deal with that too. And there are like new industry practices coming up, like team topologies, Unfix. There are a bunch of things that really seemed like a good ideas and good approaches for us to try. And because of a certain hype at that moment, we picked team topologies as one of the options to consider. And we did our team change in few phases, draw it as a team topology map, and we brought that as a solution to the problem. So now if we'll do this, first we'll split like that, and then we'll do this like that, and then we'll do it like that, we will have our organizational structure figured out. Well, that did not happen, first of all, because we were not thinking about certain implementation details. Like, we were very excited about the idea of these platform teams, but we did not really pay any attention of validating the feasibility of implementing those platform teams. So we prepared this proposal, we brought this proposal, we presented it, but then it just ended in the drawer. We did not move anywhere forward with it. While we were working in our domain, while we were working on checking the industry for the practices that are emerging that would help us, there are some things happening in the organization. Vinted is a long-living company already. Like, when I say long, of course, it may differ. For me, long is already like 10 years. So Vinted was 10 plus years. They were building their software in the same monolithic architecture for a while now, and while it was a good choice back in the day, it was no longer feasible at the scale that we were operating. And that started to become very, very visible, not only for the technical people who had it more difficult to change it, to onboard new people, but it was also visible to our business and product organization, because they were not able to get the features, get the functionality that we want off the door as fast as we would like to. And that started to become more and more essential to our context. We needed to address monolith as part of a solution that we were looking for. Because if we only have this alignment in our teams, but we don't have the alignment in architecture, you know, thinking about Conway's laws, these things are interacted. We will not go far away. And business is also something that we need to take into consideration. If we want to understand how we want to change our architecture, we really need to understand what sort of business problems we are about to solve. So that really started to be more important to us, and something that we were not as aware in the beginning. Well, being aware of it is a little bit tricky maybe in this context. Like, we've read all these books that said these things. So like, we knew that you have to care about these things altogether. But then you go into practice, you do these things, and then you tend to forget very, very important aspects. But now all of these were looking straight in our face, and we had to step back or go back into our initial problem map and take a new look into it. One good thing that happened with us thinking about how we deal with the monolith was this modularization effort. And in order for us to modularize our monolith, we were also looking for ideas how to best achieve it. And this is where we started looking into DDD as a potential way to address it. So it happened that DDD was not only a very good option for us to deal with the architecture challenges, it was also a very good option for us to consider when we are thinking about our organizational structure. So all of this context, all of these things that we saw in our team, in the broader organization, and in industry, allowed us to clarify what we are actually trying to achieve, really ground us in the ways that we are trying to optimize the system for. So what are those things that we are trying to optimize our system for? We distilled that there are like 3 essential things, 3 essential capabilities that we wanted to have, that we wanted our team to have. So first of all, it was super important for us to be able to focus. And focus is not only about having focused time without no distractions. It was also about our ability to have very clear focus on the key opportunities that we wanted to solve. Whenever we choose these key opportunities, we really wanted to focus on a delivery in a small increment so we could validate these opportunities and our assumptions fast. And also focus on the quality that we are building the system to avoid waste going further. Another thing that still remained as an essential part from the problem space that I showed you before was alignment, right? We knew that we need teams that are aligned and moving together towards shared purpose. And we knew that we need to divide our domain in the areas that would have clear boundaries. But if we have those clear boundaries, we also need to be very explicit of how those boundaries interact with each other. Because at the end of the day, we are delivering value to the users, and we don't really care how our architecture is structured, how our teams are structured. We are experiencing the value as a whole. So we needed to have this holistic approach while we divide and conquer and make sure that everyone is moving towards the same direction without teams stepping on each other's toes. And we also knew that this complexity of our domain is still unknown to us to some extent. It's not only that we don't know things about our domain, but it's also that our domain is changing. And then technologies are changing. And then our business people are changing their minds about where we want to focus. So flexibility was a very, very important aspect for us too. And when we say flexibility, we also think about our strategy so that we would be able to react to the signals that we get from the external, either business or our customers, and react fast to these changing needs. We also have to keep in mind that we need to flexibly change our team structure in order to best serve those needs, and that architecture needs to follow, because if we don't do that, we will lose that alignment all over again. So these were 3 things that we deemed to be most essential for us as a capabilities to embed in the team that we wanted to continuously evolve towards the stage where we are able to shapeshift fast to respond to these needs that are appearing in the market, appearing in our teams, appearing in the industry, and all over the place. So that is basically our evolution journey. Like, how do we evolve towards these faster shape-shifting capabilities so that we could respond to these different functions that we are expected to execute? And when I think about, creating some sort of process or way of working in the organization, I'm always wary about, naming a thing. Because I feel like when you name a thing, it can be misinterpreted so much. Like, we saw this happening with Agile, we saw it happening with other methods. Whenever someone writes it down, someone will find a ways how this does not work. And that was like a source of my nightmares all over again. And I was like, okay, so we have this idea how we want to operate, but there are so many gaps, and it's so open-ended, so if we will write it, but people will think that this is a recipe to follow, they will stop thinking with their own heads. And that is still a very important challenge that we deal with daily, but nevertheless, we need to understand that many things can change. and we can iterate and we can experiment, but if we do that without a certain direction, we are not moving where we want to move. So it was crucial for us to understand what are the fundamental aspects of that operating model, of this ways of working that we want to have in our team, not to lose track of these fundamentals. Because at the end of the day, it will help us fight inertia and entropy that is inevitable in any sort of system. People will want to work as they used to work because that's what they know. Even if you tell them, do this instead of that, over time, you just look away, and they start doing the thing that they used to do, because, that's how inertia works. And entropy as well, if you do not put a conscious effort into keeping a certain form of your structure, it will start to dilute. And these were really, really, big challenges that we constantly face. And that's why I think it was important for us to choose less. And this is like, less is more. So for us, we decided to stick only on few fundamentals as rules that cannot be broken on how we operate. And these two rules that we are committing not to break is subdomain and mission. So subdomain, we use that from DDD. We wanted to embed DDD into the way we are operating. The way that we are operating can be very similar to Anthix model and basis. You have heard, if you attended certain sessions, about the collectives, right? That's a concept of a bigger team, right? And subdomain, in our case, is also a bigger team. Some of our subdomains are relatively small that we would still fit in this small two-pizza team canonical example. But we have subdomains that are roughly of 20 people. And you can imagine that with 20 people, you can no longer do a typical, like Scrum, for example, because that's just too big of a group of people. So to compensate for that, we had a concept of emissions. So mission is also can be run as a team. So we want people to focus on a specific mission, and mission is a subset of the work that subdomain is doing. So people from that subdomain would identify a meaningful piece of work that we need to do, and then they would figure out who are the right people to work on that particular mission to move it forward. And we want this to have as a systemic constraint so that keeping focus would be an easier way rather than multitasking. So while we have certain rituals on a subdomain level, all the main development rituals are happening on a mission level. So if the person decides to take part in multiple missions, it means that we will have multiple meetings to attend to. And that was a very conscious choice to add this constraint, to add this pain in the system to discourage people from multitasking. Another thing that I want to mention with these changes in the team and how we saw the teams was getting back to actually very, very primitive definitions of what team is. And if you Google it, most probably you'll find something in between the lines that the team is a group of people who has a shared goal. And for a long time, I feel like we over-indexed the group of people, where we talk a lot about longevity. And obviously, long-lived teams have a benefit, right? When you hang around with the same group of people for a long time, you know them better. It increases your ability to collaborate. But at the same time, I saw teams that have been long time together, but they not necessarily started to collaborate better. And the key there was that the shared goal was missing, right? We over-indexed on the group of people. We sometimes lose track of shared goal. And that was something that we wanted to bring up front, that the shared goal is a primary focus of the team. So when we think about the subdomain, that's an area, and let's maybe jump to this one. So that's a specific area of the ownership and the team members belong to that subdomain. So I had this conversation yesterday about people misusing DDD, and in a way we are doing the same. Subdomain is not something that in DDD is used to define the team, right? So we call our teams subdomains, and that's not part of the DDD. But what is a part of the DDD is how we perceive that ownership, and that's both solution and the problem space. So whenever we build something, that becomes a part of a subdomain. Like actual people in the actual world are using your software. So your software becomes part of that subdomain that you're trying to serve. And that's super important, and this is something that we emphasize to our teams, to not only isolate themselves into maintaining, improving the code that we have built, but also to think for the opportunities, for the problems that our actual members have, and make decisions how to improve that area that they are responsible for. Another bit about the missions, as I said, it's like a way how we manage all of our efforts. So if there's a meaningful piece of work that needs to be done, we will write a mission brief that outlines what is the purpose of that mission, how it is strategically aligned with our organizational goals, and then we will figure out who are the right people to work on that mission to achieve that. And people should work to focus on that particular strategically aligned mission, and we don't want those missions to become like epics sometimes are in the Jira, where you have this like bucket of random stuff in it. So this is something that I also see that this inertia sometimes creeps in, that people take the mission pattern, but we use it the same way as we used to do for the epics. So this is constant improvement that requires constant deliberation, constant diligence to really stick to these fundamentals. And that's why it is super important to not have too many of them. Another benefit that we saw of having the mission team pattern in our system was that while we moved in the organizational structure where we modeled our teams based on the subdomains, the architecture does not move there automatically, right? We need to do a lot of work to actually do that. And it means that we are still kind of slowed down by our existing architecture, and some work still needs to happen across the different boundaries. There's also some work that is functional, where we need to do some sort of functional changes, like migrating our data structures into Dataverse or things like that, where we need people to collaborate across the different subdomains to achieve something that is important to us. So mission team pattern also helped us to work on these bits of work that we were not able to do before because it would just not fall into our existing team structure. So, with this brief definition of a subdomain and subdomain and the mission, the original design of the subdomain operating model contained few other elements. And we had this concept of side quests. So while people work on the mission, there typically is some smaller work that needs to happen. It may not necessarily be related to the strategically aligned missions, but it's more of a keeping lights on sort of activities, maybe a bug there and there. So for that, we had this like side quest metaphor used, so that whenever you have idle time in a mission team, you can pull something from the side quest backlog and work on it while you're either waiting for something or just want to change of scenery, so to say. Another pattern that we had defined was code stewardship, because one of the risks that we identified with moving in between mission teams and that frequent reteaming was that code ownership will get lost, that the code quality that will suffer. That was something that many of our team members highlighted as a potential challenge. So in order to counteract this, we had this concept of a code stewardship. So whenever a person is on a certain subdomain and that certain subdomain has a code associated with that subdomain, the person or group of people are assigned to steward that code, which in practice would mean that they are consulted whenever changes need to be made in that area, that they are asked to do a code reviews if something is a bit more complex, or in general that they would see if the quality is not degrading in that particular area and would highlight if something is going wrong. Another bit that was not prescriptive in the framework itself, but was something that we just knew that we need to do and we need to figure out was feedback loops. So we had a primary template of how we imagine the feedback loops should look like. Then we talk about interactions between domain and subdomains, between the subdomain and the mission teams, and all of these things. Those feedback loops, as initially designed, in most cases did not work as we expected. We tried and failed, tried and failed, tried and failed, figure out different ways, and there are still areas that we have not figured out to this day. And that, for me, that was a huge learning. When I was working on that subdomain operating model, I really wanted to make it future-proof, like to have everything that everyone would ever need, even still trying to keep it very lean and compact. So what I noticed that not every time what you expect to be working, which is based on your experience and the best practices in the industry, will actually work, because you still interact with a system that has its own sort of patterns, that it has its own certain belief systems. And then some of these things, like side quests, were dropped and then picked up again by the teams because they actually saw the problem. But I was like at this moment, yeah, but I told you that you will have this problem, so I gave you a solution up front. And I learned that this is not how things work in reality. People are not really willing to solve problems that we don't have, and that is just something that I imagine someone will have. So I believe that the same thing will happen with code stewardship. That's one of the patterns that we have not implemented yet. That was modeled based on the smaller team in our domain that has been very diligent in terms of how they are taking care of their code. So we thought that it works very well for them. In general, it feels like a very, very solid practices. We should scale it up. And that scaling up just didn't work for us. So I'm still, keeping a watchful eye to see when this becomes a problem and people will be actually willing to solve it, either with code stewardship or something else. And I already mentioned that feedback loops, we had them initially defined in a certain way, and then we noticed that people are just doing their own thing. And then at some point I decided that, we need to see how these things evolve naturally. So I think that's the beauty of approaching these changes as an evolution and not a revolution. You allow things to go in their natural order of things while you maintain a little bit of a steering when you have these principles and fundamentals that you really want to kind of maintain. So with all that said, the question is, did we actually achieve our primary purpose of being able to shapeshift really fast? And well, fast is subjective, right? So for one person, fast could be like a day or an hour. For another person, even a year could be a fast thing. So that's, again, a snapshot of where we are right now. And that's way faster where we used to be. So quite recently, by the end of the last year, we got this new strategy. And our marketplace business unit wanted us to reorganize. We had some new teams moving into our domain. There was this new strategy that we needed to adjust our team structure to best serve. And it was very uncertain period of time, because we just learned about that strategy. We did not really knew what it means. We got a team, an additional scope, actually multiple teams with multiple additional scopes that we have not been familiar with. We did not model for it whenever we designed our original subdomains. And even after our first iteration of the subdomains and subdomain designs, we already knew that there are some evolved understanding of how a subdomain should look like. And not only because we got it wrong the first time, but also because some technological changes happened in our domain. So there was a lot of context happening. It was Christmas period. It was yearly evaluations. So in all of that context, we managed to prepare the structure and do all the work needed to reorganize in 2 months. So I will leave it for you to decide if it's fast or not. It was way, way faster than we did it for the first time, and it was way, way faster than we just discovered that we need to work on the organizational design. And we still need to kind of do more and more and more of that to become even more faster and really be able to change our form as soon as a trigger from the outside appears. Another big difference was that when we started with the domain-driven design roughly 2 years ago, there was basically no one in our team who knew about it. And when we did our first draft of how we wanted our subdomains to look like, we basically had the one model to choose from. We worked so hard to prepare that model, no one was really willing to work on additional alternatives. Everyone felt like, well, that's good enough. We invested a lot of time in those workshops and those domain discovery exercises. Let's just stick to this one. And as I said, 1 year forward, we knew already that we did not understand all of the things as well as we have, and some things have changed. And this time, we had to repeat the same exercise. I was a bit scared at first, because I remembered like these first times when we were doing event storming. And well, it was really frustrating. People did not understand what is happening. They were not really engaged into it. And this time, it was so much different. Everyone already saw the benefits of dividing in these subdomains and the clarity that it creates for us. Everyone was really excited to do so. So whenever we said that we will be repeating this, we were like, yeah, let's do it. We feel like there are certain problems that we have, and we need to sort that out. So this time, we had over 20 different models that we chose for. In addition, this time we were better at involving our whole team into this design process. Of course, we used collaborative modeling, but on top of that, we used a consent decision-making from the sociocracy, where we brought a proposal, we collected objectives and the concerns, then we addressed all of these objectives in a smaller groups with people who were stakeholders in that. And we adjusted the initial proposal, and we did it again. And then we had a third proposal that is our current version of how our subdomains are divided. So best part of it, I'd say, is that while we were changing our subdomain structure, mission team flexibility allowed us to keep delivering, keep working on these meaningful efforts. The teams were not paralyzed just waiting for that direction, just waiting for that final team composition. Missions kept running. So, we had this like 2-month period where we are working on our design while all the operations were just happening. So to compare with where we were a year ago, to compare where we were 3 years ago, this is a huge advancement in our ability to shapeshift. So I like to think about this that, without practice, you cannot really get better. And none of these things are essentially easy things to do. Domain-driven design is not easy, even though it's not necessarily, when you read it may look simple, right? So is Agile. When you read about it, it may seem simple, but it's not as easy to actually do so. So that's why we keep on pushing ourselves, repeating, especially on those patterns that we think are fundamental to our success to get into that direction where we want to get. And before I start my presentation, I wanted to share a bit more of the personal learnings. So not some things that our organization learned from that experience, but some things that I actually learned. So first of all, as you heard in my introduction, I know a lot of frameworks. I love learning new frameworks. I just love collecting those ideas. And when I was early in my career, I really wanted to implement those frameworks as they were defined. I truly believed that you need to do things as they are prescribed in order to really understand how they work. Now, I started to realize that following what is written, even though it is a good, well-thought-through approach, is not the same as building the capability. The ability within the system to act in a certain way. And I found that, this is way more valuable for people to learn these things, for people to have that muscle and not to be very prescriptive of a framework. And that was really a deep insight that really shaped allowed me to discover different angles of my Agile coaching practice. Another thing is like everyone knows that failing forward is a good thing, right? But I still had this feeling that I need to protect everyone and I need to prepare very much. And when we did this first iteration, we really kind of massaged everyone, prepared, communicated, and over-communicated. When we did it, people were like, that's not a big change. Why did you talk so long about it? We could have just done it. And that's where I started to optimize for failing forward more than for being prepared. I'm not saying that being prepared is not important. I'm just saying that sometimes maybe skills are not really balanced that well. And I know that for my situation, I was really over-indexing on being prepared, and failing forward actually proved to be a better tactic. And then the last one, which is, I mean, it's a lesson that I'm still learning, is to embrace the complexity. And when I say embrace, it's not just know that complexity is everywhere and that you need to deal with it, but really kind of be excited about it, really be enthusiastic and really kind of take it all in, approach it with an open mind, with very, very positive attitude, because complexity is fascinating. And it's a constant driver for me to keep learning, keep moving, keep experimenting, because at the end of the day, we don't know so many things, and we just have this amazing opportunity to learn those things as we work, as we attend conferences, as we collaborate with our colleagues. So that's something that I want to leave you with today, to really embrace that complexity and find this joy in unexpected, in the surprises, to keep being motivated by the opportunity of unknown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ornella.
How did I do with the time, though?
You're doing great. We still have time for questions. They're coming in on Slido now. You can see them here. Let's start with the top one. Could you provide some concrete examples of subdomains collaborating on their mission and side quests in Vintage or Vinted?
It's Vinted.
Yeah.
Subdomains collaborating on their mission and side quests. So these are like two different things. So one example that is just on top of my head is experimentation. So we had a bit of a lag in our lead time because of how long it took for data analysts to assess the results of the A/B test. And while all of the analysts had that challenge, like none of them could tackle it in their own team that they belonged to. So for that, they created the mission where they wanted to optimize and standardize some of the tooling, some of the templates, so that assessment of the A/B test results would be faster. So that's a cross-subdomain mission that I could remember. And in terms of the side quest, that's something that typically a single person can do in less than a week. So it could be anything from an ad hoc request from someone to a specific bug fix that is not related to any of the ongoing missions.
Thank you very much. Gabor asks, how would you rate top topologies in your journey? Was it a necessary stepping stone?
I think so. I think it was essential for us to discover that we should think about the teams through the lens of their purpose. And I think that the framework, well, not framework, like this tools provided by team topologies are very, very helpful, and we do have platform teams. And we don't call our subdomains stream-aligned teams, but in the essence, we are about having a clear understanding what sort of value you are delivering. So, yeah.
Thank you. 6 people want to know, are you okay with that strange black smoke that is being blown at you?
Well, it definitely made me feel more like a rock star. So, yeah.
And I think it's just water vapor, so it's not really smoke. So it's quite refreshing, actually, from where I'm standing.
Marco, was that your question?
Okay, we still have time for the next one. Please give us a specific examples for the concepts, specific teams, specific problems. It's interesting, but hard to imagine how it really works.
Okay. So an example, at Vinted, I don't know how many of you use it. It's like e-commerce platform to buy and sell second-hand goods. So as pretty much all of e-commerces, you would have a search or browse interfaces. You would have some sort of inspirational content provided to you. So one of our subdomains is responsible for the search user journey. So basically, all of the things from whenever the query is being typed in, suggestions that are being provided, search being saved, and the content being retrieved. And now the other one, like a sister subdomain, is a discovery, which doesn't care for the user intent to find something specific, but they rather care about users, like providing suggestions to users. So they have interfaces that help people to discover specific items. They are responsible for the recommendation engines, and again, for the same retrieval of the items in these specific touch points for the user. Hope that helps to visualize subdomains a little bit better. So these two, search and discovery, these are two distinct subdomains focusing on their areas.
Thank you so much. We have a gift for you. It's Hungarian essentials of paprika and
That's lovely. Thank you.
palinka as well. Big round of applause for Ornella, everybody.
Thank you,
so
everyone.
much.